morning children. Today we are going to start the chapter chemical bonding and molecular structure. Okay, first let us see what is chemical bond. In order to explain that, let us go back to Dalton's theory. Children, we have studied that according to Dalton's atomic theory, the smallest particle which exists or we can say that all matter consists of atom, or atom is the smallest particle which exists in nature, but it has a problem. It's not having any independent existence. Is it clear? We have studied that atom is the smallest particle which exists in nature, but it is not having any independent existence. That means if you just consider two hydrogen atom, if you have to combine this two hydrogen atom to form a molecule, we need some attractive force between them. This attractive force which hold the atoms together in a molecule is termed as chemical bond. Is it clear, children? So chemical bond is defined as the attractive force which hold atoms together in a molecule. Atoms in a molecule. Is it clear? So the attractive force which hold atoms together in a molecule is termed as chemical bond. Is it clear, children? So atoms, when they have to, whether it is like same type of atoms or different type of atoms, when you have to hold them together, that binding force or the attractive force which hold these atoms together in a molecule is termed as chemical bond. Is it clear? This chemical bond, children, they are of different type. We can see that chemical bond means it can be ionic bond, or it can be covalent bond, or you can see coordinate bond, or you can see the presence of that is metallic bond, or we can consider that is hydrogen bond, or in addition to this we can study about van der Waals force also. These are the different types of attractive force which hold the atoms together in a molecule. So is it clear what is chemical bond? Chemical bond means the attractive force, the binding force which hold atoms together in a molecule. Now in this chapter we are going to study about different theories, different types of bonds, and the different theories which we are going to use to explain this different bonds. Is it clear, children? And in addition to this, in this chapter we have to study, we have to search for certain answers also. The first one in that we can say that why do these atoms combine together, or why those atoms participate in this particular bonding, or what is the structure of these molecules, or what are the forces which are responsible for holding these molecules. All these things we have to learn in this particular chapter. And let us start the chapter by explaining about Courcelle and Lewis approach to bonding. So we are going to study about Courcelle's and Lewis approach to chemical bonding. Okay, let us explain, let us study how they explain the concept of chemical bonding. Children, in early days, the people used to believe that these atoms combine together, or they combine to form molecules in order to satisfy their valencies. But there was no logical explanation for this concept, and this W. Courcelle and G.N. Lewis. W. Courcelle and G.N. Lewis were the first people who tried to give a satisfactory explanation on the basis of this valences, and they explained this concept on the basis of octet rule. So let us study what is octet rule. Octet, that means 8. Means according to this theory, we consider that every element in the universe has a tendency to get 8 electrons in their outermost shell. Okay, according to this theory, every element in the universe, actually exception is there, that is for hydrogen, helium if you consider, or generally we can say that every element in the universe has a tendency to get 8 electrons in their outermost shell. That means according to them, according to us, we know that the elements normally participate in bonding just to attain inert gas configuration. That is what is termed as octet rule. Okay, so octet rule states that the element shows a tendency to attain 8 electrons in their outermost shell. Is it clear, children? That is about the statement of octet rule. Now let us consider Lewis dot symbols. This thing also you have studied in 10th class. So let us just revise this topic. Lewis dot structure. Lewis dot structure. Children, this Lewis dot structure gives us an idea how to find out the valency. I'll explain this. Suppose if you just consider Na. We are representing Na like sodium with a single dot. This Na, the symbol of the elements, actually give us an idea about the nucleus with the inner electrons. Okay, according to Lewis symbol, the symbol of the elements give us an idea with the nucleus and the inner electrons, and the valence electrons we are representing using a dot. Is it clear? I'll explain it further. You know that the electronic configuration of sodium is 281. Okay, so when you represent Na with a single dot, that means this Na represents the configuration 28. Is it clear? Na represents the configuration 28 and this single dot represents the valence electron. Is it clear, children? So whenever we are representing Lewis dot structure, the symbol of the element represents the nucleus with the inner electrons and the dot represents the valence electron. Is it clear? So let us consider the symbol of certain elements. For example, if you want to represent calcium using Lewis dot structure, we can represent it as Ca with 2 electrons. Okay, again Ca represents the configuration 288 and 2 valence electrons are there. Or if you consider magnesium, again in case of magnesium we can represent Mg with 2 valence electrons. Or if you consider aluminium, we can say that Al with 3 electrons. Or if you consider the element chlorine, you know what is the number of valence electrons in case of chlorine? It possesses 7 electrons. So here in all these cases we have seen that according to Lewis dot structure, the dot represents the number of valence electrons. That means electrons present in the outermost shell. Is it clear? So can you tell me what is the benefit of this Lewis dot structure? Or what is the advantage of Lewis dot structure? Children, we can see that as the advantage, Lewis dot structure help us to calculate the valency of the element. Is it clear? Lewis dot structure help us to calculate the valency of the element. In case of calcium, you can see that 2 valence electrons are there. That means the valency represents the number of electrons in the valence shell. So the valency of calcium, you can say that it is 2. Or if you consider aluminium, it possesses 3 electrons in their outermost shell. So the valency of aluminium, or we can say it as 3. But in case of chlorine, you can see that there are 7 electrons in their outermost shell. So chlorine, the valency will be equals to 8 minus 7, that is equals to 1. Is it clear, children? So generally we can say that in an element, if it possesses 1, 2 or 3 valence electrons, valency will represent the same. And if it has 4 or more valence electrons, then valency will be equals to 8 minus valence electrons. Is it clear? That is the advantage of Lewis dot structure. So once more I'll explain. Lewis dot structure will give you the symbol in Lewis dot structure represent the nucleus along with the inner electrons, and the dot represents the valence electrons. Okay. And the advantage of Lewis dot structure is that it will help us to calculate the valency, as well as you can predict the valence electrons in case of elements. Is it clear, children? So according to Lewis dot structure, we have discussed about octet rule, and we have seen that every element in the universe generally have a tendency to attain 8 electrons in their outermost shell. Now we are going to study how these elements are going to attain this 8 electrons in their outermost shell. Obviously, it can be lost by transference of electrons, that is by losing or gaining of electrons, or by sharing of electrons. So let us study about these things one by one. First, let us consider ionic bond or electrovalent bond. First, we are going to study about ionic bond or electrovalent bond. In order to explain this particular bond, first let us see an example. You consider the formation of sodium chloride. You know that sodium possesses the configuration of 281. The configuration of sodium is 281, and that of chlorine is 287. The configuration of chlorine is 287. That means according to Lewis structure, we can represent sodium with 1 valence electron, and chlorine we can represent it as 7 valence electrons. So according to Lewis structure, we consider sodium as 1 valence electron, and chlorine will be having 7 valence electron. So this sodium loses 1 electron and chlorine will be gaining 1 electron. That means we can see that sodium forms Na plus, and sodium chlorine will be getting Cl minus, and this attractive force which hold this oppositively charged ions, that is what is termed as ionic bond. Is it clear, children? This electrostatic force of attraction which is responsible for this particular binding is termed as electrovalent bond, or we can say that the bond which is formed by losing and gaining of electrons is termed as electrovalent bond or ionic bond. Is it clear, children? So ionic bond is defined as electrostatic force of attraction which hold oppositively charged ions in a molecule. Okay, electrostatic force of attraction which hold oppositively charged ions in a molecule is termed as ionic bond or electrovalent bond. Let me explain you another example. You consider the configuration, the formation of magnesium oxide. Magnesium, we know that the electronic configuration of magnesium is 282 and that of oxygen is 26. So to attain stability, magnesium want to lose 2 electrons, and at the same time oxygen needs 2 more electrons. Therefore, according to Lewis structure, we can consider the structure of magnesium. It is having 2 valence electron, and oxygen possesses 6 valence electron. So, in order to get stability, this magnesium will lose 2 electrons to oxygen. Okay, magnesium atom will be losing 2 electrons to oxygen, and you will get Mg2 plus O2 minus, which results in the formation of compound MgO. Is it clear? So this electrostatic force of attraction which hold atoms together in a molecule is termed as ionic bond or electrovalent bond. And we can say that the number of electrons lost or gained by this atom is termed as electrovalency. Is it clear, children, what is electrovalency? Electrovalency means number of electrons lost or gained by an atom. In case of magnesium, it loses 2 electrons. So the electrovalency of magnesium is 2, and at the same time here oxygen gain 2 electrons. Therefore the electrovalency of oxygen is 2. Is it clear, children, what is ionic or electrovalent bond and what is electrovalency? Once more I will repeat the definition. Electrovalency means it is the number of electrons lost or gained by an atom, and this electrostatic force of attraction which hold ions, that is oppositively charged ions in a molecule, is termed as ionic bond or electrovalent bond. Is it clear? Or the bond which is formed by losing and gaining of electrons is termed as ionic bond or electrovalent bond. Now let us see what are the conditions required for the formation of ionic bond. What are the conditions needed for the formation of ionic bond? Children, we have seen that is in the last example, you have seen that the bond is formed between a metal and a non-metal. So generally you can see that in case of ionic bond, the bond will be formed between metal and non-metal. And actually what are metals? The elements which shows a tendency to lose electrons. And whatever be the energy needed for this purpose is termed as ionization enthalpy. Okay. That is, in order to lose electron, the energy required to remove the electron from the outermost shell is termed as ionization enthalpy. This you must have studied in chapter 3. Okay. So we can see that if the first condition needed for the formation of ionic bond is that the metal should have low ionization enthalpy. Is it clear? We can see that the metal should have low ionization enthalpy. So what is ionization enthalpy? The energy required to remove the most loosely bound electron from an atom in the neutral isolated gaseous state. Okay, the energy required to remove the most loosely bound atom from the neutral isolated gaseous state is termed as ionization enthalpy. For example, if you consider sodium possesses only 1 electron in the outermost shell. Okay, 1 electron is there in the outermost shell. And if you consider another element, chlorine is having 7 electrons in the outermost shell. So obviously we can see that sodium will be showing more tendency to remove this electron, to lose the electron. Therefore, and generally being a non-metal, chlorine shows tendency to gain electron. So this, in case of sodium, the energy needed to remove the electron will be less, since already sodium is ready to lose the electron. And this particular amount of energy needed to remove the electron is termed as ionization enthalpy. So as the first condition for the formation of ionic bond, we can say that the element should possess low ionization enthalpy. Is it clear? Now let us consider the second factor. Second factor we can consider that we are going to discuss about electron gain enthalpy. That means you consider the case of chlorine. Chlorine, the electronic configuration is 287. That means according to octet rule, or in order to attain stability, chlorine will gain 1 electron and in order to get 8 electrons in their outermost shell. So whatever be the energy needed for this purpose to gain the electron is termed as electron gain enthalpy. Is it clear? Electron gain enthalpy, the energy needed to attract the shared pair of electrons towards itself is termed as electron gain enthalpy. So here we can say that the element should have a negative electron gain enthalpy. High negative electron gain enthalpy. Okay. That means there should be a non-metal, then only it will be showing the tendency to gain electron, and the element should have high electron gain enthalpy, high negative electron gain enthalpy. And the third factor necessary for the formation of ionic bond, we can consider it as lattice enthalpy. Children, you know what is lattice enthalpy? Lattice enthalpy means it is the amount of energy released during the formation of 1 mole of an ionic compound from oppositively charged ions. Is it clear? Lattice enthalpy is defined as the amount of energy released when 1 mole of an ionic compound is formed from its oppositively charged ions in gaseous state. And here as the third condition, we can say that they should have again negative lattice enthalpy. Is it clear? These are the 3 conditions necessary for the formation of ionic bond. So they should have low ionization enthalpy. That means particularly the cation should have low ionization enthalpy. The anion should have high negative value of electron gain enthalpy, and they should have they should have negative lattice enthalpy. These are the conditions needed for the formation of ionic bond. Okay children, let us continue with our class. In last class we have studied about the formation of ionic bond and the conditions needed for its formation. Now let us see what is an ionic compound and what are its general properties. Ionic compound means we have studied about some examples like sodium chloride, or we have seen magnesium oxide, or you can consider aluminium oxide. In all these cases, the bond is formed by the losing and gaining of electrons. This type of compounds in which the bond is formed by losing and gaining of electrons is termed as ionic compound or electrovalent compound. The compound in which the bond is formed by losing and gaining of electrons is termed as ionic compound. Now let us study their general properties. As the first property, we can say that ionic compounds possesses a definite geometry. They have a definite geometry. That means they possesses a crystalline structure. They have a definite crystal lattice. Is it clear? Ionic compounds have a definite geometry. As the second property, we can say that ionic compounds possesses high melting and boiling point. Ionic compounds generally have high melting and boiling point. Why? It is due to the presence of strong electrostatic force of attraction. We can say that ionic compounds generally possesses high melting and boiling point. As the third one, we can say that ionic compounds are good conductors of electricity. They are good conductors of electricity. Children, here there is a special properties there. They act as good conductors only in aqueous form or in molten state. Is it clear? Ionic compounds are good conductors of electricity only in aqueous form or in molten state. Is it clear? So we have seen that they possesses a definite geometry. They generally have high melting and boiling point, and they are good conductors of electricity in aqueous or in molten state. Why? Due to the presence of mobile ions. As the next property, we can say that they are soluble in polar solvent. Ionic compounds are soluble in polar solvent. Okay, that is on the basis of the property like dissolves, like we can say that ionic compounds are generally soluble in polar solvent. And as the last property, we can say that ionic compounds generally participate in ionic reactions. Okay, ionic compounds generally participate in ionic reactions. For example, if you consider silver nitrate combines with sodium chloride in the aqueous form, and as a result of this reaction, you will get a white PPT of silver chloride plus sodium nitrate. Last year you must be remembering, you have studied about this type of reaction called double displacement reaction. So this ionic compounds generally participate in ionic reactions. Is it clear, children? The general properties of ionic compounds. We have seen that ionic compounds generally possesses a definite geometry. They have high melting and boiling point due to the presence of strong electrostatic force of attraction. They are generally good conductors of electricity in aqueous form or in molten state due to the presence of mobile ions. They are generally soluble in polar solvent, and ionic compounds participate in ionic reactions. Is it clear? Ionic bond and its properties. Now let us study. Suppose children, if you just consider chlorine. Consider the formation of chlorine molecule. You know that chlorine atom possesses 7 electrons in their outermost shell. Okay, so 2 chlorine atoms are there and both of them possesses 7 electrons in their outermost shell. And just now we have studied about ionic bond, and you know that ionic bond is formed by losing or gaining of electrons. Now in this case, is it possible for one chlorine atom to lose electron, or is it possible for the other one to gain electron? No, since in order to attain stability, both of want to get one more electron. Therefore, that leads to the formation of covalent bond. So now we are going to study about covalent bond. Okay, children. So here we can see that in order to attain stability, both of this atom try to share electron. So just say chlorine shared, first chlorine shared 1 electron from the second one, and second one share 1 electron from the first one. So this type of bond which is formed by sharing of electron is generally termed as covalent bond. Is it clear? The type of bond which is formed by the sharing of a pair of electron is specifically termed as single covalent bond. Okay, so generally we define covalent bond as the type of bond which is formed by sharing of electrons, and if the sharing is between a pair of electrons, it is termed as single covalent bond. You consider another example as the formation of oxygen. You know that oxygen possesses 6 valence electrons. Okay, so 2 oxygen atom we can see, both of them possesses 6 valence electrons. Now in order to attain stability, first oxygen shares 2 electrons from the second one, and second one shares 2 electrons from the first one. So we can see that here the covalent bond is formed by the sharing of 2 pair of electrons. So this type of covalent bond which is formed by the sharing of 2 pair of electrons is termed as double covalent bond. Is it clear? The covalent bond which is formed by the sharing of 2 pair of electrons is termed as double covalent bond. Let us consider another example in case of nitrogen. You know that nitrogen possesses 5 valence electrons. Okay, you can see the presence of 5 valence electrons in case of nitrogen. In stability, again first nitrogen atom shares 3 electrons from the second one, and the second one shares 3 electrons from the first one. So this bond is formed by the sharing of 3 pair of electrons, so it is termed as triple covalent bond. Is it clear, children? So we have seen that covalent bond means the bond which is formed by sharing of electrons. If the bond is formed by the sharing of a pair of electrons, then it is termed as single covalent bond, and if it is formed by the sharing of 2 pair of electrons, then it is called double covalent bond, and if it is formed by the pairing of 3 pairs of formed by the sharing of 3 pair of electrons, then it is termed as triple covalent bond. And just like electrovalent bond, the number of electrons involved in sharing is termed as covalency. In this case, you can see that each oxygen atom is sharing 2 electrons, so the covalency is equals to 2. Is it clear? Covalency is defined as the number of electrons involved in sharing. Is it clear what is covalent bond? And the compound in which the bond is formed by sharing of electrons is termed as covalent compound. Is it clear? The compound in which bond is formed by the sharing of electrons is termed as covalent compound. And now let us study about the properties of covalent compound. As the first property, we can say that covalent compound generally exist as discrete molecules. Okay, they don't have that definite molecular structure. They exist as discrete molecules. Is it clear? As the first property of covalent compound, we can say that they exist as discrete molecules. Second property, we can say that they generally possesses low melting and boiling point. Covalent compound generally possesses low melting and boiling point. Third one, they generally are poor conductors of electricity. Covalent compounds are generally poor conductors of electricity. As the fourth property, we can say that they are insoluble in polar solvent but soluble in organic solvent. Covalent compounds are soluble in organic solvents. Okay, organic solvents means we can say that CCl4, benzene, ether, etc. Okay, and as the last property, we can say that covalent compounds generally participate in molecular reactions. Okay, they generally participate in molecular reactions. Is it clear, children? That is about the general properties of covalent compounds. I'll repeat it once more. First, we can say that they exist as discrete molecules. They have low melting and boiling point. They are poor conductors of electricity. They are soluble in organic solvents but insoluble in polar solvent, or they participate in molecular reactions. Now, about the next type of bond we will study in next class. Thank you, children.